Okay, I think it's time for us. That's it. I try not to overuse things that are good. It does work okay. You know, I hate to confess this on camera, but one of the first trips we ever took as my youth ministry at Parkway, we went to this camp way down in Louisiana. And there was a little bit of a cult vibe rocking. It was back during the Crossroads days. And it was just, but the dude would get the kids' attention with his whistle. And I mean, he was murdering this whistle. And I told two of my senior boys, I said, the next time he blows that whistle, one of you hit him high, one of you hit him low, and I'm getting that whistle. And we took that dude's whistle away from him. Years later, this genius kid in North Carolina decides to have an outdoor youth rally. And so we're at the outdoor youth rally, and guess how he's getting everybody's attention? Oh, man. And I mean, make you feel like that little cat on Bugs Bunny, you know, hit the ceiling. And I wasn't serious. I just merely said, man, I'd give somebody $23.75 for that whistle. About 20 minutes later, Mr. Taylor Watson, Mr. Brandon Jacobs, and Mr. Ryan Smallwood show up to me and hand me a whistle. And I pull my wallet out, counted out $23. Jacobs goes, and 75 cents, sir. It's not personal, it's business. And so I have both those whistles at my house that they mugged this dude in the bathroom. They waited on him in the outdoor bathroom. And when he walked in, one guy hit the lights and the other two nailed him. It's a beautiful thing. But anyway, so I try not to do irritating things to get people's attention. If you have your Bibles, look at Psalm 23, which is a super strange place to start. And I know I've told you this before, and it's just a story I like to tell. There was a group of scientists, and they were doing experiments on macaque monkeys. Now, if you understand brain structure, the hand model of the brain, everything inside my palm and inside of my fingers is my emotional brain. Okay? You fold it over, everything on the surface is the neocortex and the prefrontal cortex, all your logical stuff. The thing that connects the emotions to the intellect is the hippocampus and some things right there. So you've got this funnel that gives meanings to memories and gives memory context. Okay? If you take the hand model of the brain and you look at just my fingernails, you're the people in the room whose brain has that part. This is the reason we do experiments on monkeys and monkeys don't do experiments on us. That separates us from everything on the planet, the prefrontal cortex. We not only have the feelings that we have, but we have feelings about our feelings. Anyway, they're put these little probes in these little macaque monkeys' brains, and they're watching them do stuff. And one of the things they're doing is they've got this functional MRI, I guess, on the screen, and when this little monkey eats peanuts, like this upper right quadrant turns red or blue or green or whatever. And that's what's going on. So they do whatever they do with monkeys and write down their numbers and stuff. Well, they take a break or they leave the room. And there's a scientist in the room, and he didn't go with them. And, you know, geeky scientist guy in a lab coat reaches over here to the monkey's peanut jar, starts rocking the peanuts. And he notices this little macaque monkey looking at him. And then he notices on the brain scan that the monkey's peanut eating center is lighting up. Although he's not eating peanuts, he's watching this guy eat peanuts and it fires. And so they started doing some pretty serious research, and that led to the discovery of what they call mirror neurons. And all primates have them, including us. And a mirror neuron just is simply the ability for me to walk into a room and see that you're sad and I feel sad. Or watch you get excited and me be excited. It's why video games work. It's why watching sports works. It's how we have the capacity for sympathy or empathy. It's probably why porn works. Because you have the capacity for your brain to have a shared experience vicariously, although you're not doing it. People who have a mirror neuron deficit are usually have personality disorders or sociopaths or narcissists or jerks. When you read Psalm 23, and David wouldn't have called it this, but Psalm 23 is the mirror neurons of a sheep. So David was a shepherd, and he doesn't write about being a shepherd in this passage. What does he write about? I'm a sheep. The Lord is my shepherd. And everything that he says in this passage is from a sheep's viewpoint. If you understand the eccentricities of sheep, they won't drink water out of a stream that's flowing too fast and making too much noise. Still waters. They overgraze and they pull grass out by the roots, so you have to take them constantly in search of green pastures. My cup runneth over. They won't stick their head in a bucket to drink. They're very paranoid. They'll stand out in the hot sun and graze until they die of a heat stroke unless they're anointed with oil. They're easy prey for predators. And so when the shepherd is with them, they eat. There's a banquet in the presence of their enemies. And even though they can't defend themselves, and even though their only option is to run, even though they walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you're with me, your rod and your staff comfort me. Because a sheep is guided with a staff, and he's protected with a rod, because that's a tool used to beat predators. So David writes from the standpoint of, hey, my shepherd king, and that's an Old Testament image of the shepherd king. My shepherd king understands my needs, my eccentricities, my enduring vulnerabilities, and my weaknesses, and addresses them. What does that have to do with marriage? That's not a rhetorical question. What does that have to do with marriage?
That's everything your spouse should understand.
The things that you should understand about your spouse. I know that's what you meant to say. And apologies for the podcast episode, by the way. I just made everybody go look it up. So that was what I did. You see what I did there? So yes, it's the idea of, do you strive to have a view of your spouse that is that intimate? And so when we talk about, that love pyramid, love, intimacy, trust, and selflessness, intimacy comes in not just sexual intimacy, not just physical intimacy, but this idea of two becoming one, and me understanding you and you understanding me. And so when you start thinking about, okay, do I respond to my spouse's needs, wants, vulnerabilities, and eccentricities? Now, as a therapist and as a person who does some classes teaching cops how to deal with people who are in an altered mental state, you don't enter into somebody else's delusion. Okay? So, if you see a dragon, I don't go, well, that's a big one. I don't do that. That goes bad real fast. Okay? Because you end up in court, well, Mr. Jones saw it too. Well, now the judge is after me. But I don't see a dragon, but I bet if you do, it scares you to death. I hadn't said I agree with it. I hadn't said it's reasonable. I hadn't said it's rational. I just said I get it from your point of view. There are some things that are important to your spouse that are ridiculous. There are some things that your spouse finds as a source of insecurity, and smart people go, oh, it's not a big deal to me, but it's a big deal to them. I'm going to address it from their point of view. And you'll see me use these ridiculous little hand motions, not this, but this. That's attunement or alignment. And so last week we talked about dwelling with people with understanding from 1 Peter. And we talked about that Jesus was the compassionate high priest because God put on a tent and camped with us for a while so that he could understand our needs and our weaknesses. Well, this is a continuation of that, because now we're going to kind of talk about love languages. How many people have heard that phrase, know about it, what we're talking about, love languages? Okay? Love languages, and I don't mean to be insulting, But love languages is a very, very simplistic explanation of what I believe is connected to a study done by Yak Panskeep at the University of Kentucky, where he talks about the 7 emotional command systems in the brain. And all primates have 7 compartments or 7 emotional command systems that are how we deal with our emotions. In the book, The Relationship Cure, John Gottman talks about how that if you understand the emotional command systems, your operating system and somebody else's, then you can bond with adult siblings, step-parents, neighbors, co-workers, adult family members. It's not just a thing about marriages, it's about relationships. So some of the backstory on some of that is that when we are interacting with each other, there's a series of really important exchanges that go on in our relationships. Think about the monumental moments in your relationship. I've been married to Jackie for 37 years. It'll be 38 in December. And what are the monumental moments in a relationship? Pardon? Okay, having a baby. That was huge. You know, I didn't realize how much that affected my thinking. When I retired from Memorial Parkway and didn't have to write a weekly bulletin article, I collected all the bulletin articles I'd written over a 10 or 12 year period. And I started pulling some files when Lonnie Beth got married. And I found every article I'd ever written about being a dad. From us finding out that there was a minion on the way, all the way down to playing with her children. And so, you know, having a child is huge. What else are monumental moments in your marriage? Pardon? The beginning of it, how we met, when we dated. You know, when you figured out, hey, I'm going to cut this one from the herd. You know, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I remember those days with Jackie. That's pretty monumental. What else? Anniversaries. Hey, this is celebrating the fact that we actually got married on this day. I did a wedding Sunday afternoon, and the bride interrupted the ceremony because she forgot her husband's wedding band. Walking down the aisle, he said, I'm going to pull a stunt on Paige. I'm going to act like I don't have the rings. And one of his little nephews had them. But before we even got started, she was like, started whispering to him. And here I am trying to preach, you know, I'm like, this is odd. And she finally says, I'm so sorry, but I forgot his wedding band. And there were probably 300 people there. There were retired cops. There were DEA agents there, a couple of feds. And the lady who decided to go get the ring was wearing high heels. So of all the men in the room who are physically fit, you let the lady in heels run up the hill. You know, I said, for the love of all that's good, don't run in those shoes. But she runs up the hill and runs back down. And so you're standing here, you know, waiting on the lady to come back down the hill. It's the funniest thing. It's pretty cool. But yeah, she'll remember that the rest of her life. And every day, every year on the opening weekend of bow season, her husband will remember that they got married on bow season. No, that they forgot the ring. That's what they'll remember. So yeah, the anniversary is a big deal. What else?
Retirement.
Pardon?
Retirement.
Okay, if you live that long, yeah, retirement. So now we've, you know, my wife retired from being a school teacher after 25 years, and she's now a project manager. But the projects are at my house. I was up in a pine tree on a ladder building a steel cable so we could have a curtain that closes her new swim spa. And so and the next door neighbor lady walks over and goes, so Lonnie, how you enjoying retirement? I said, oh, Jackie's got all kind of energy. Have you thought about throwing some cough syrup over the fence every now and then for Jackie to find? You know, maybe it'll slow her down some. But yeah, retirement's been a huge thing for us. And what else? Any period of significant illness is a monumental thing. All right? Because if you've been the person who's sick and someone cared for you, or you've been the caregiver. That's a major milestone in a relationship, because some relationships don't survive that. Okay, what else? Death of a child. Not necessarily a happy memory, but you'll be surprised that fractures relationships. And it does. And I've seen more not survive it than I have survive it. Okay, long-term care of a parent and then one or more of your parents die. It's a very significant event when Jackie's dad passed away. And it was a kind of a slow decline. We watched him get sick and go through some stages of dementia. And this was a guy that could do anything. He literally built the house she grew up in with field stones he pulled off his own land and built the house. Dug the well, wired the pump. He'd do anything. And then he couldn't figure out that we'd unplugged the battery from his truck to drive it in his latter days. So that's a significant thing that happened. What else?
What things that you experienced together, like for the first time, like traveling or vacations or just new things that you haven't done before that you do with your spouse?
You notice how all of a sudden the story of you is sprinkled with big stuff. We met, we married, we had a baby, we lost a baby, we survived a major illness, we lost a parent. Those are 7, 8, 9 big milestones in a marriage? But what did Sonia just say? Everyday stuff. Taking a trip, going someplace you've never been before. It doesn't have to be Disney place. It can be when we went to the little place you eat in Fayetteville. You ever notice all the senior citizens group go to Lynchburg all the time? I'm just saying, the golden oldies are going to go to Lynchburg again. And they're burning that road up to Lynchburg. Maybe that's why they're so spry. I don't know. But Sonia, notice there wasn't a specific thing. Sonia said, all the little things, and she didn't say little, all the things we've just done together. That's the glue that holds a marriage together. If you start thinking about, okay, we've been married 37 years. We got married once. We had a baby. Her dad died. Lonnie Beth lost several babies while she was trying to have grandkids. If that's the sum total of us, that's not a very big book, is it? But how many breakfasts have you had together? How many walks have you been on? How many sunsets have you watched? How many sunrises have you watched? How many deer stories has she had to hear? How many volleyball games have I watched? And all of a sudden, connecting to your spouse's mirror neurons really revolves around this thing that we call bids for affection. And in a study about observing couples, it is a creepy study. They took an apartment at the University of Washington and built what they call the Love Lab, which sounds sketchy already, right? But it literally had the two-way mirrors and had cameras and people sitting in the walls, and they watched couples interact. And you could go stay for free, but there were creepy people in the walls. And they almost couldn't finish the study because sitting in an apartment observing couples being normal was mind-numbingly boring. You'd almost bang your head against the wall. Because what do you do when you go home after church? What do you do when you come home after work? What is your routine getting up? You don't have this, John, Marcia, you're awake. And you move slow motion. That's not marriage. That's dating, but it's not marriage. And all of a sudden, when they started compiling their research, a healthy couple in a 1-hour meal might have 40 bids for affection. I'm going to get a glass of tea. Would you like one? I'm going to go to the mailbox. Would you like to walk out there? Hey, I got to run to Piggly Wiggly. You want to ride in the truck? Hey, I'm going to take the dog around the block. You want to go with me? And really, really good relationships are built on, I throw you a bid and you can turn toward it, You can turn away from it, or you can turn against it. The guy that I'm really good friends with, he worked across the office from me. So I had my office. There's this big lobby, and then he had an office over there. And his grandparents ran Walt Barty Coin and Bullion. And old brother Walt was the old fella that ran this coin shop. And he'd pinch a penny till it squealed, you know. And he was old, and he worked it with his sister. So you got these two octogenarians, and they fought like cats and dogs because they weren't married. It was brother and sister. And she came over one day and said, "Lonnie, I'm old enough to be your grandmother. Now, I've got a tag in the back of my dress. I want you to cut it out." She said, "And you may see my unmentionables when you look down." I said, "Miss Ann, I'm probably going to survive this exchange, okay? I'm okay." So I cut the tag out of everything. Walt had a cane that was a tiger's tail. And since he graduated Auburn University, he had not missed a home game. Bought a house down there, would go down, and he'd come out, "Lonnie, I need you to get something out of my car for me." I'd go back there and have these little buckets labeled with car parts. So I grabbed one in each hand because I think I'm strong, and like, they were full of gold bullion. He was shipping them UPS. Millions of dollars coming in by UPS. I carry them one bucket at a time, okay? Well, I did Miss Ann's funeral and I did Mr. Walt's funeral. And I got to know their grandson, Jared. Jared one day said, "Hey, Lonnie, what do you carry?" I said, "Well, I got a 1911 45. He goes, "I'll start bringing one to work. That way, if there's trouble, we can exchange ammo across the hall." I mean, so he wants to slide, magazines across the hall and stuff. He stayed there all the time. If I don't have clients, I'm not at the office. "Hey, Jared, I'm going out to get lunch. Would you like to go with me?" "I can't leave this place. I've got clients coming in all the time." That would be turning against my bid for affection. "Hey, Lonnie, I'll go with you." That's turning toward my bid for affection. "No, I don't really want any lunch. I can't go with you, but would you bring me back a Dr. Pepper?" Turning not against, but away. I can't go to lunch, but I'll let you share a drink with me. And you think about the things that we do to interact with other adults when people ask us to go do things that we are not interested in. And I'm guilty of it. "Lonnie, the men are going to have a golf day." Have a grand time. I learned to say, "Can I go right in the cart and heckle you?" I've been and watched lots of people play golf. The problem is I don't own any golf clubs. And if I go play golf with you and you let me borrow your clubs, guess what happens? The club is this long. And I'm like, how do you even use this thing? You let me hit that little ball with a baseball bat, I could probably do a good job. But I've gone and ridden around the golf cart with guys while they did 18 holes of golf and just enjoyed the fellowship and the fun and driving golf carts. But in the past, I turned away. I turned against it. I don't golf. I didn't grow up golfing. That's not something I do. Well, how many opportunities to get close to people have I just killed? Because when you tell somebody I don't play golf, they don't ask you again. They don't try to invite you. They don't try to teach you. It's, I don't do it. And so when your spouse or an adult or a child or an in-law says, "Hey, would you like to do this?" you can turn toward, you can turn away, or you can turn against. And our bids for affection come from our ability to connect to our spouse's love language. Now, when Yaks Panskeep talks about the emotional command systems, so this will be a super weird exercise, okay? There's a van full of people, and they're driving to a cabin in the mountains. And as they get off the van, I'm going to describe them. Okay, a little close to home, I guess. I'm going to describe the people as, and you think in your mind, "Hey, I'm that person. That's me on that trip." And so what he describes is, so you're driving in and the van stops, and the first guy to get off is the commander-in-chief. And it's going to get dark by 7:30. We need to have all the luggage off the van and upstairs. Guys upstairs, girls downstairs. That way the girls can have access to the kitchen, and the guys won't make a lot of noise because we're not going to stay up late and talk. I'm the guy in charge, and we're going to organize everybody. Okay? Second person gets off the van is an explorer. Hey, I saw a sign on the way that says there's a waterfall. I'm going to go walk to the waterfall before dark. Who wants to go with me? Then there's a nester. Hey, look, there's 7 of us, but there's only 5 chairs on the front porch. We need 2 chairs on the porch so we can all sit around together at the porch. And we need to make sure that there's a place for everybody to sit around the fire. That's the nester. Then there's the energy czar. Now look now, if you're going to walk to that waterfall, everybody needs a bottle of water. Everybody needs a granola bar. And tell you what, let's sleep tonight and get up early and walk to the falls. Okay? Then there's a sensualist. The person who said, wouldn't it be romantic if we built the fire outside and we sat and we watched the sun go down, or got up early in the morning and watched the sun come up? Okay? And then there's the jester. There's the guy that goes in and finds the bearskin rug and he gets under it and he lays there very still. And then when the ladies come in, rah, he stands up. And then there's the sentry. Hey, you guys going to the waterfall? I saw a sign here that said bears. And so one of you at least needs to take some bear spray. Probably would recommend a good stick. You know what? I brought 4 pistols. So won't you? So of that crowd of 7 friends, which one are you?
I'm the one worrying about everything. Like, I'm
Commander-in-Chief.
scared. No, I'm scared to even, like, if there's only 5 chairs and there's 7 of us, I'm worried about where I'm going to be. Where do I fit in this group?
Okay, so you're kind of nesting with this group. Do I have a place with this group? All right? Somebody else.
I'm the one that will give you my gun after I hide under the barrel.
Yeah, all right. You don't have to be either or, because don't give me your gun and then hide under the bear rug, because I'll ventilate you. Yeah. I punched 1 bear, and I karate threw 1 werewolf in my time as people playing jokes on me at places. All right. Who else? Who are you? I think I'm the sentry. I think I'm that guy that says, let's make sure everything's safe. Lock down the windows, make sure there's no coyotes, heffalumps, or woozles. Check the bed for under the bed, check in the attic. If I stay anywhere, bed and breakfast, and there's a drop-down thing I look in there. I either want to find the live body or the dead body. I just want to find the body. I'm just going to look up there and kind of figure out what's going on, all right? Who else? And I'm kind of the explorer, too. Nobody? Pardon?
I said, I guess we weren't on that bus.
You just weren't on that bus? So, does one of those things stimulate your thinking? I tend to be more like this or tend to be less like this. I saw Sonia smiling to herself, looking at Greg and writing something down. I just observed that. Now, whatever that mode is, whoever that person is, when you're allowed to be in that role, you're more stimulated. You're in the zone. You feel super good. I'm not competitive. People don't believe that. And I don't really like to be in charge. I'd much rather go somewhere that Scotty's in charge of and I can make things happen for Scotty. Rather than, all right, everybody come here, we're going to do this. I'd much rather, I used to actually sell that when I went into private practice. I said, I'll come to your retreat, and for this much money, I'll speak at your retreat. Or, I'll come to your retreat, and for this much money a day, I'll run your retreat. I'll design your schedule, I'll design your activities, I'll do your theme, I'll do your lessons. And for this much money a day, I'll find you a place, I'll book it, I'll handle the meals. You click my website and you have a retreat. And I realized I didn't enjoy that. You can't pay me enough money to do that. And so I just go and speak at retreats. But rather than be the guy in charge, rather than be the camp director, I want to be the right-hand man of the camp director. I want to be that guy. I want to be the Secret Service guy who stands behind the president wearing cool glasses, kind of staring at things. And most people don't realize that about me. I'd rather be kind of the sentry guy than the in-charge guy. I don't know why, just that flows with me. There's something about playing with ropes that when I'm out in the woods, whether I'm building something with ropes or whether I'm playing with ropes to just play with ropes, I'm in a special place in my mind that I'm doing something with my hands I don't have to think about. It's called the flow if you're an athlete and you get into the flow. If you have that zone and your spouse knows it's your zone and leads you in it or through it or keeps you in it, you guys are really, really, really connected. Does that make sense? Now, if you understand what your love language is, if you understand the emotional command systems in your brain and which one you relate to, the real question is, which one does my spouse relate to? What is a romantic evening? Don't answer that. Weirdness, You always have that guy in the back, handcuffs, no, it's not that kind of class. We're not going to do that, So I'm glad Frank Williams is not in here. Just glad Frank's not here. I love Frank, but sometimes he's a class buster. All right? But when you start thinking about what is your idea of a good time, whether it's out to eat or stay home or snuggle or moonlit, whatever that is, if it's not what your spouse wants, if you're not attuned to them, if you don't speak their love language, if you don't know their emotional command systems, then you run into the problem I ran into with the ninja sword. I own several. I've got a little short one. We used it on the ropes course. We had a thing called a quantum leap. You climb a utility pole. You've got a harness on your back. It goes up through a catching device and down to the ground. And you climb up, and the last step is about this high. So you've got to put your foot on top of this thing and balance. You pull this little sword out, and you jump off the pole and ring this little bell. And then we catch the rope, and we float you to the ground. Well, I've retired the ropes course. COVID killed us. We went 2 years, didn't make any money. And so I'm dismantling our ropes course, and that's not something I do anymore. I still climb trees to hunt, and I still rock climb with Troy, so it's not like but I've got this little sword that I don't need now. And so it was laying around the shop or whatever, and Gunnar was there, and he got it, and he wanted to fight with it. It's not a real sword. It's a Kydex sword. Don't panic. I'm sorry. I didn't make that clear. It's a Kydex. It's a polymer. And so he's in there wearing out my punching bag with his sword. Well, he left, and I thought, I'm just going to send him that sword. So I made him a sheath for it, a little ring with some braided stuff so he could wear it either on his side or on his back, which is super cool if you're 5. And then I thought, I don't have anything for rowing. So I called Lonnie Beth. I said, hey, I'm sending Gunnar a sword. Do I need to send Sissy Bear a sword? She said, no, Dad, just send her some lip gloss. I said, what? She said, you can get it at the dollar store. I said, you have failed as a parent. That a granddaughter of mine would prefer a 99-cent lip gloss to a ninja sword. And then she said, Dad, do you want her to have what she wants, or do you want her to have what you want her to want? That's some deep wisdom from a 33-year-old daughter. So she got lip gloss and Gunnar got a sword. Do I want my spouse to have what she wants, or do I want her to want what I want? Is that as profound to you as it is to me? So what is my spouse's idea of romance, togetherness, intimacy, a pleasant evening? How does she hear I love you? And I may like to say I love you way differently than she likes to hear it. But if I say it the way I like to say it, but not the way she likes to hear it, guess what happens? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He drives me through the pastures like a cowboy. Yeah! That's cooler than herding sheep. They don't make any movies about sheep herders. Have you noticed that? Ever. In the beginning of Big Jake, John Wayne buys a sheep herd because they're about to hang the shepherd. As far as I know, unless they're abusing them, sheep aren't in cowboy movies. But the Lord didn't try to be a cowboy. He was a shepherd, because that's what sheep need, is shepherds. And so when we start thinking about what is my love language, it's really more important to understand what is my spouse's love language. Now, if I can remember the love languages off the top of my head, it's words of admiration, physical touch, quality time, acts of service, and gifts. Now, that's not 7 people getting off a van. But which one do you prefer in that list? Physical touch, quality time, words of affirmation, gifts, or acts of service? What makes you feel more loved than one of the others? Physical touch. Okay? Hold hands, rub my shoulders, put your hand on my thigh, rub my feet, play with my hair. Okay, that's a stretch. But, there's all kind of stuff. Now, what happens is, and I'm just going to pick on Kyle and Christy. So, Kyle's trying to watch a football game, and Christy sits over there in his space, and he pulls the Doc Holliday, "I'll not be pawed at, thank you," because if that's not his love language, and she's saying, "I love you," all he hears is, "Get off me. I'm trying to watch a ball game." Right? Okay, I heard a bell, by the way. And so what happens, and I use this, and I don't want to creep anybody out, but, I like to have my shoulders massaged because I do things with my arms and my shoulders. And they get tight. And I have little short, stocky limbs. And so when I sit down in the floor and I want Jackie to rub my shoulders, I want her to dig into the meat. I want her to find a bone. I want to hear stuff pop. I don't really get a good shoulder rub from Jackie unless I lay on the floor and hold the couch and she digs her heels into my trapezoids. That's a good, no. We've been down that road too. But anyway, and so that's how I like my shoulders rubbed. And so when Jackie says, "Hey, would you rub my shoulders?" Guess what happens? Ow! Stop it! Who are you, Mr. Spock? And so when she rubs my shoulders, it's like there's a granddaddy spider doing river dance somewhere. And like, I don't even feel that. I rub your shoulders like I want mine to be rubbed, and you rub my shoulders like you want yours to be rubbed. That's love languages. How does my spouse want her shoulders rubbed? Not how I like it. And so you've got to figure out. And so guys, if you're sitting around and go, she's always doing stuff for me. She's always running errands for me. She irons my pants. She puts stuff up. She set out my lunch. Said, "Honey, here's your laptop. You forgot to put." She's telling you in her language, "I love you," and she wants to hear that from you. And when you don't do that, you're miscommunicating because you miss the mirror neurons. Does that make sense? And so if you're getting a lot of gifts, another gift. I must be special. She's begging you to give her gifts. And I didn't know this for a long time. Apparently Chad Bader has dropped the class. I'm out. I failed. I'm done. So understanding the mirror neurons, what are the vulnerabilities, what are the eccentricities, what are the needs, and then take it a step further, what are their wants? And do you want them to want what you want them to want, or do you want to do for them what they want? And understanding that perspective will create a connection. It'll create intimacy, because when I respond that way, I'm really acting in a way that is not selfish. And when I'm not selfish, you trust me. When you trust me, we can have vulnerability and disclosure and intimacy, and then you reach that pinnacle where the attitude, not the emotion, but the attitude is this idea and commitment to love. All right? They've turned the herds loose. I'm going to turn you guys loose. Thank you guys very much. You'll have a sub next week. I got to be in North Carolina, and so I'm going to get somebody to pinch hit, and so I'll be absent next week. Thank you guys.